Hey guys, welcome back. This week I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some very simple tips that I think will help you out your first few times out shooting to avoid some of the easy mistakes that a lot of people make that just makes it much more difficult to shoot and much more difficult to be consistent, and hopefully just get your mind in the right place a little bit to think about some stuff when you are actually taking on some targets. All right, tip number one, and it's such a simple thing, but so many people sort of don't realise that they need to do it, is footwork. Something you see a lot of newbies do is when they get at the stand, they'll stand pretty much square on, so that they are like this, that their body weight is distributed evenly across their 2 feet, shoulder width apart, or even like this, but they're standing like this, and that gives you a very limited amount of movement that you can do. You need to think about how your body moves with a gun and where you're going to break the target. Watch behind when you see someone maybe shooting the stand in front of you. Watch the way they stand. Watch where they're breaking the birds. Watch where you can see the birds coming off the trap. And that gives you a clue as to where you need to stand. If we look, we can see a trap in the distance there, and I know that there's a looper coming off that stand that I'm going to break about here. I'm going to orient my body with my front foot oriented towards where I'm going to break the bird. It may be that there's a pair, so I need to think about where I'm going to break the second bird, but for simple purposes today, we'll just talk about this one. It's coming off here, I'm going to break it here, so I'm going to orient my body so at 45 degrees offset, shoulder width apart, with my front foot pointing towards where I'm going to break that bird. This gives me the ability to pivot effectively using my knees to pivot to where I'm going to break the bird. Shooting like this is really awkward. I can feel it in my back actually, how that's difficult to move the gun. So I guess my first tip is think about your footwork. Think about how you're standing in the cage. You'll see people sometimes standing to one side or the other because they want to get a better view of the bird. That's slightly more advanced, but you need to consider your body and mechanically how you're going to move to hit a bird. Tip number two leads on quite nicely from tip number one, and that is thinking about your gun position. Really common problem you see with a lot of newbies is if they can see the trap that the birds are going to come out of, they'll basically start with their gun pointing at that trap or near to it, and they'll call for the bird. They're pointing here, and basically it comes out at like 40 miles an hour, and it's here before they've caught up with it, at which point it's actually really difficult to break. So if you know you're going to break the bird up there, give yourself less to do. Move the gun up, out and away, and look for it with your eyes rather than, I'm assuming you're shooting for a mounted gun obviously, rather than trying to move from here all the way up here. Put your gun halfway. There are way more advanced, by the way, videos on how to do this, but this is very basic stuff. Track out the flight path of the bird, put your gun about halfway along it, and basically be ready halfway between where you think you can see it and where you think you're going to break it, so that you are doing less with the gun. You've given yourself less to do, chances are you're going to be able to catch up with it. A lot of the time, if you are aiming at where it's coming from, you've already missed it before it's gone because you've just given yourself way too much to do. All right guys, tip number three is about weight distribution and stance. It kind of goes along with footwork a little bit, but it's something super common, see it all the time, especially with really newbies, and it's about how you sort of displace your weight when you mount a gun for the first time. Really common is to kick your hip out because guns are heavy and mount the gun like this. It's easy to stand like this, especially if you stood for a long time when you don't know what you're doing, because a lot of the gun is now over your centre of gravity. But what's difficult to do is to move and actually hit targets. This is no way to mount a shotgun. A, because I've basically now got the toe of the gun mounted in the pocket of my shoulder, which is going to hurt. My face position on the gun is rubbish, and I've just got no way to move. The better way to do this, and again, coaches feel free to disagree, this is how I was taught to do it, is to throw your weight onto your front foot. Again, we've got this 45 degrees, foot pointing at the kill point of whatever bird I'm thinking about, and I bring my weight forward, my trunk tilts forward as if I'm kind of leaning over a gate or some sort of obstacle. I'm shifting my weight forward, which brings my head down into line with my shoulders, and then when I mount the gun, it's nicely into the pocket. Plus I've got control and motion. I can drive from my knees through my core much more effectively in this position, vertically as well, than I can from this position. This is just incredibly awkward. Which brings me on quite nicely to tip number 4, which is gun mounts. Now, I'm only scratching the absolute top of the surface here. This video is not intended to replace getting some proper coaching by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just pointing out some stuff that I see people getting wrong all the time that I think, if somebody told them to do that or not to do that, their shooting could be better, they could be having more fun. So, this is how I was taught to do it. Your coach may do it differently. By all means, get in touch, tell me I'm doing it wrong. But how I was taught to do it was get your stance right and then put the gun on your face and then into your shoulder. So, face, shoulder, like that. All right, now this basically gives me consistency because if I get it in the right place on my face, then my sight picture is always the same. And then it's up to me to put my body and my shoulder behind the gun rather than plonk it in the shoulder, this is the thing you see people doing, and then just chucking your head on. Because you'll roll over the stock or you won't get enough of the stock and your head position is all over the shop. It's not consistent. It's impossible to get a decent sight picture. Your mount just will not be right doing that. Eye dominance issues creep in. Bad way to do it. So, face, shoulder, and get that stance right. Now, as I'd said, please do not see this as a replacement for proper coaching. If you want to get good at shooting, go and get some coaching at a proper shooting school and get a bunch of topics that I've not even begun to talk about today. Eye dominance, swing, how to actually address certain targets. There's a raft of subjects that I haven't talked about at all, and I'm not going to because you need a proper coach for that. This is, like I said, just a casual look at some of the dead easy stuff that you can do as a newbie that I think will improve your shooting. Okay, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope it's been useful. I'm maybe thinking about doing some more. I'm thinking about maybe doing stuff about some sort of initial gun selection. But please feedback. Get in touch with me on Instagram. Drop a comment below and we'll have a discussion. There are other topics I can cover on this. However, for now, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe. It's super important. It really does support the channel hugely if you guys subscribe. It's brilliant. Subscribers have been going crackers recently and I really, really appreciate that. Thanks very much. But just keep going. Subscribe to the channel. It does help. Like, comment, follow me on Instagram. And yeah, that'd be fantastic. The channel is, as ever, supported by Bible Shooting Ground, Hull Cartridge and Macwet Gloves. Guys, thanks very much for tuning in and I will see you next time. Stay safe and wear a mask.